Buck. Do you remember me?
Your mom's name is Sarah. You used to wear newspapers in your shoes.
You're a wanted man.
I don't do that anymore.
Well, the people who think you did are coming right now. And they're not planning on taking you alive.
Captain, while a great many people see you as a hero, there are some who'd prefer the word vigilante. You've operated with unlimited power and no supervision. That's something the world can no longer tolerate.
I know how much Bucky means to you. Stay out of this one. Please. You'll only make this worse.
You saying you'll arrest me?
There will be consequences.
Captain, you seem a little defensive.
Well, it's been a long day.
If we can't accept limitations, we're no better than bad guys.
That's not the way I see it.
Sometimes I want to punch you in your perfect teeth.
I just want to make sure we consider all our options. Because people that shoot at you usually wind up shooting at me too.
You know what's about to happen. Do you really want to punch your way out of this?
What do we do?
We fight.
Sorry, Tommy. You know I wouldn't do this if I had any other choice. But he's my friend. So was I.
Hi, everybody, and welcome once again to GeekFest Rants. My name is Carlos Perron, and joining me, I have Steve Ivona. Say hi, Steve.
Hi, Carlos.
Well, it's that time again, and that is, we're going to hit Marvel. It's time to hit Marvel. It's a new year, and there's, as we know by now, tidal wave of Marvel
Tidal
movies.
wave of Marvel awesomeness.
Exactly. We are technically now in Phase 3, but before we move forward with the actual Phase 3 trailers that we've seen and pictures that we've seen of what's being shot, let's do a little recap of the last entry of Phase 2, which was Ant-Man, that we never really had a chance to talk about. I remember we talked about Ant-Man a little bit before the movie came out because you were telling me, because I was asking you, what the hell is Ant-Man? What does it have to do with what is the comic version of it? What are we shooting for? After it was all said and done, and I remember one of the things we kept saying to ourselves is, this one has to be different. This one cannot be dark, super serious. This has to be a little lighter, more in the Guardians realm of Marvel lightness. I guess we're getting like all these different flavors of Marvel. Tell me, how did you feel about it overall?
Well, I definitely loved it. I wasn't quite sure how I would feel about it.
Yes.
Like Paul Rudd very much, in his comedies, but I wasn't sure if he was going to be too funny, that this was going to, I agree that, Marvel needed to lighten up after certain of their films, and Guardians was a good step, but I wasn't sure if this was going to go overboard. And I was very pleasantly surprised in the fact that it seemed to have the right balance in its tone. It had elements of sort of light comedy, heist comedy, but it also balanced it with some serious stuff, like with, the whole dad and daughter thing, not just with Scott and his daughter, but also with Hank and his daughter. So that had a sort of a recurring theme going through the film. And, there was also this element of, the mentor and the mentee gone bad with Yellow Jacket and Hank. So it somehow managed to just strike the right balance. I mean, it had a lot of balls to juggle in the air, but it succeeded. And I hate to sound like the Marvel cheerleader, but it worked. I mean, there are certain Marvel movies that are better than others, but again, this one, like Guardians and, like Guardians, where you're dealing with a character that is really not very well known and introducing him to a mass audience, and it really just succeeding on all cylinders with the right cast, the right script, the right director. Now, I should mention, I think it's important to mention that there was a little controversy with the
Switching directors, yeah.
Yeah, Edgar Wright, and I don't know, in terms of script, I can't vouch for how much of his original script remains, because he was working on this film for a very long time. And at the 11th hour, he gets the boot, and they bring in Peyton Reed, who is, I don't want to call him a hack. He's a good director, but he hasn't done much in the last decade. And the closest he ever actually came to a Marvel thing was, there was a concept running around Fox of doing the Fantastic Four in the 1960s, kind of like X-Men First Class, which I thought would have been interesting, but it got shelved. And they eventually went with the Chickless and Chris Evans version, for better or worse. But anyway, so Peyton Reed came in. He, again, he's good with the light tone in his films. So he seemed to be a good fit. And, you had this great cast with not just Paul Rudd and Michael Douglas and Evangeline Lilly, but then the supporting cast of all these great comedic actors who just fit their roles. And as I said, I think of it as sort of like a little Italian Job, little kind of cutesy, heisty, thing with superheroes. It's my long-winded way of saying I was really, really pleased with the movie.
Yeah, I agree with the fact that it was, to me, a little more serious than Guardians. Guardians, maybe because it was such a bigger movie with a lot more superheroes in it, I guess, more of a team. This one, it had the lightness, but it also had the slightly more serious stuff, and it balanced, I think, more towards, a little bit of both than it did with Guardians. Guardians was a little more light throughout the film.
Yeah.
Even in the end of Guardians, you have him dancing around and stuff like that. And it's like, wow, this is really pushing the light.
Yes, definitely.
I love Michael Douglas. He was just so good. And it's funny because you see him older, and the guy is older, and the guy is not as healthy as he used to be. And it kind of shows. It shows in what he looks like now. And I'm glad that these kind of movies are attracting, we talked about this before, are attracting, A-list celebrities that they want to get involved in this sort of thing.
It's terrific. You had Glenn Close in Guardians, you had Robert Redford in Winter Soldier, and now you have him, and, who knows who's next. But yeah, he was terrific, and I loved that little prologue scene where he's, 25 years younger. And I thought that was pretty impressive, by the way. The special effects, that was pretty cool. And just, setting up who his character is. And I thought that he had a great rapport with Paul Rudd.
Yes.
And I also thought he had a great rapport with Evangeline Lilly, who's, spoiler alert, playing his daughter. From a comic standpoint, they messed around a bit with some of the elements of the Ant-Man Yellow Jacket story, none of which bothered me.
Okay.
Because Yellow Jacket is not a separate character in the comic, the character played by Corey Stoll.
Yeah.
Yellow Jacket is another identity of Hank Pym.
Oh.
That eventually, Hank was Ant-Man, he was Giant Man, he was Goliath, he was Yellow Jacket. And for a very brief time, Yellow Jacket was a villainous persona of Hank Pym when he had a sort of a nervous breakdown. But then eventually he became a hero in the Yellow Jacket identity.
Wow.
So they split the character and made Yellow Jacket the villain, and Scott, he's a character from the comic. He is the successor to Hank. So that was accurate. And they also, the other big change was they made Hank much older, so he could not be a founding member of the Avengers. Hank is the one who created Ultron in the comics, and now they changed it to Tony Stark, which, again, none of that is problematic. None of that is a big deal. But, being that I'm sort of the comic nerd here, I should just point that out to anybody who's not knowledgeable about it. But again, usually when Marvel messes around with their own sort of history, they do it in a way that just makes sense for a film, for a modern audience, in terms of a story that they might be adapting from the 60s, so it all worked.
Well, the movie was pretty successful. I mean, obviously it wasn't like Avengers type of successful, but I mean, I think it was serious enough to be the level of success that it actually got Marvel to tweak the Phase 3 lineup, because I didn't know that Ant-Man was going to be in as a sequel in Phase 3, and all of a sudden it's Ant-Man and the Wasp. It's like, it's like, where did this come from?
I think what Marvel does, they always announce their plans, their phases, and I think there's always room for them to tweak it depending on if a new film does well. You can, like, I wouldn't be surprised, you're dealing with, in Phase 3, you're dealing with so many first movies, origin movies, whatever you want to call them, that, you could have a Black Panther 2, you could have a this and Humans 2, whatever. So I think that, based on the success of a film, they're gonna be like, okay, there could be a Spider-Man 2. All these things I think are somewhat built into the plan.
Right. And like you said, obviously, they could always say, all right, you know what? This is going to be Phase 4. They don't have to cram everything into one specific amount of time. Now, when we talk about Phase 3, it's a predetermined amount of time that Marvel kind of separates and kind of reserves for certain films. We're talking basically here 2016, which is the year we're on right now, all the way through 2019. So it's a 4-year run of films, which we really haven't seen that many films, in that period of time. Previously, Phase 1 had only, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 films. Phase 2 had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 films. Now we're dealing with 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 films. So this is a pretty ambitious plan that they're going for. But granted, they do have a little more time than they did before. So let's talk a little bit about Phase 3. As we said before, Ant-Man was the end of Phase 2. Now we're moving on to Phase 3. First film up, which is coming out already, like technically it's this spring, if you think about it, May of 2016, is Captain America Civil War, which we've seen the trailer already, which they've given us the trailer. And oh man, I am so glad they're continuing in that line, that Winter Soldier darkness that I enjoyed so much. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like they're going in that direction, right?
Well, yeah, they're adapting a very popular story and, yes, a very dark story from the recent Marvel past, the Civil War storyline, which, again, they're going to have to tweak it a little. That had to do with a Superhero Registration Act. As a result of a devastating occurrence, the government decides to register superheroes, and that would mean in the comic that meant that they had to register who they were and divulge their secret identities. Now in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there are no secret identities, but there's still that notion of registration and government control, which is from the story. And they're going to, I'd say it's like every other adaptation. It'll probably be a liberal adaptation and not have, every single element. But yes, that notion of Captain America and Iron Man being on opposing sides of this Registration Act is very much front and center in this film. And it's something that I think the films have all been building to. And I just can't wait to see it. That trailer was just incredible.
It was great. And one of the things about the trailer is that the thing about the movie itself is that it's going to introduce new characters that are being spun off on their own. For example, Black Panther. I mean, we got to see a little bit of him in the trailer, and 2 years later, he's getting his own movie.
Yeah. You have Black Panther. In this film, you're talking about, you could call this Avengers 2.5.
Yeah, it's like an Avengers film.
They're really, there are so many characters in the film and who are going to really get a lot of screen time as opposed to they were introduced in like Ultron, but now you're going to have Scarlet Witch. You're going to have Ant-Man. You didn't see him in the trailer, but he's going to be in it. You have Black Panther. You also have Spider-Man, which is, he is a pivotal character in the Civil War storyline. So the fact that Marvel at the 11th hour managed to make this deal with Sony and include him in the film is just great, because now they really don't have to mess with the original story too much. And again, I don't know how much screen time he's going to get, but it's going to be, I just can't wait to see the Spider-Man character finally interacting with all the rest of the Marvel Universe characters. It's going to be the only two characters that you're not going to have in this film are Thor and the Hulk, who are going to both be, obviously, Thor, and in the next Thor movie, which is going to be Thor Ragnarok, and I can't wait to see them together, because you know what happens when they get together.
Comedy ensues.
Yes.
Well, another thing about this film is that they're reuniting the Russo brothers again, and these guys are slowly becoming a very hot item with Marvel, because they're apparently also going to be doing the third Avenger film.
Right, yeah.
Part 1 and Part 2. And this is weird, because we talked about it earlier, that Marvel, you know, kind of doesn't like to put too much stake, too much credit on their directors, because they don't want to give them, huge heads. They don't want them turning into Robert Downeys. But this is like their fourth film now, right?
Yeah, I mean, they have to. I mean, if they want to have a certain continuity with their films, I think they do, and they see that they have to keep working with people who I guess have what you'd like to call the Marvel method down. And the Russo brothers, who really hadn't done much. I mean, they blew the doors off with Winter Soldier. So they're the logical choice to continue along that vein with Civil War. And obviously giving them the Avengers films, it's like giving them the keys to the kingdom. Obviously Age of Ultron was good, but it had its weak points. And, you could kind of tell, I guess, Joss Whedon had, he was done. And I think it was time to hand the reins over to these guys. And I'm thrilled. I can't wait to see what they have planned, not just for Civil War, but for Avengers.
Yeah, no kidding. Up next, we have Doctor Strange, which we haven't seen any trailers, but the pictures are finally coming out. The promotional pictures of, behind the scenes and real pictures. What can you tell us about Doctor Strange as far as, now granted, we haven't seen the movie, obviously, so we don't know what the difference is going to be, but what is the traditional canon, if you will,
he
of
was
him?
He was a very sort of conceited, self-centered surgeon who is in an accident, and he loses the use of his hands, so he becomes basically a drunk. His life is pointless, aimless, whatever. And he's eventually, he's in the depths of despair. And what eventually happens is he seeks out this ancient mystic who he will eventually become the successor. This person is the sorcerer supreme of Earth. Okay. And he becomes the student of this person, and he becomes, Earth's mystical defender. This is going to be as huge for the Marvel movies as, say, maybe in terms of other realms, as huge as like Thor or maybe Guardians, because now they're going to explore Marvel's mystical realm.
Okay.
And try to, as best they can, incorporate this into sort of a very science-based, reality-based universe that they've created.
Yeah, no kidding.
Which they kind of planted the seed for it in Ant-Man when he shrinks down to that subatomic level. That's where you're starting to get the sense of other dimensions and other realms in the MCU. So
it's the opposite of Iron Man, I guess.
Oh, completely. And all his powers are mystical, magic, whatever. And whereas Thor tried to explain, the godlike powers of the Asgardians as just much more advanced science than we had.
Yeah, but with Thor, you also have the mystical and the muscle. You have the fighting and the brute force. But this guy, I guess he's not a brute force guy. He's just like a magic user or something like that.
Right. But I mean, you can't tie any of this to science. This is all hardcore magic.
Mysticism, yeah.
So I don't see them trying and explain it away as some sort of, science-y kind of thing. They're just going to have to go completely into that, realm and just say, look, this is what it is. And, you just have to accept it. You have Benedict Cumberbatch, who I think is a great choice as Stephen Strange. And when I heard some of the other actors they were, flirting with, like Joaquin Phoenix and everything, I think he might have been okay. But I really think Cumberbatch is perfect in terms of, his acting style. His look is perfect. The pictures that we've seen, I think he just is dead ringer for the character. And I'm just, again, I don't see how this is a miss.
Any idea how many films he signed up to do?
My guess is he's probably got a 3-picture deal. Marvel likes to do trilogies with these characters if they're successful. Whether or not he shows up in the other films is an open question, and because Cumberbatch is, not like these young guys who had to sign their life away, he's pretty established. I would think that it would be maybe a tougher sell to get him to do like a 6-picture deal. So maybe it's, 3 Doctor Strange movies, and then who knows? It could be, making deals as they need him, like Robert Downey.
Wow.
Not sure.
Now, do you know anything about the director, Scott Derrickson?
No, I know nothing about him.
I'm taking a quick look here, and you might remember her from Hellraiser Inferno, one of your favorite Hellraiser films. He's got The Exorcism of Emily Rose, The Messengers, The Earth Stood Still. Ooh, that wasn't that great. Sinister, I think you like that one, right?
Yeah, Sinister was really good. And actually, Exorcism of Emily Rose was pretty good as well.
Ooh, I never saw that one.
Yeah, and I think, he's not quite A-list, but he might be after this.
But it's interesting. He also has, Devil's Knot, Deliver Us from Evil, Sinister 2. I guess they're going for... I don't know if we want to call him a hardcore horror guy or a up-and-coming horror guy.
Well, he's certainly in that realm. I mean, it's not going to be a horror film, but there, has some certain elements
of supernatural, maybe?
Supernatural, yeah.
Now, the only other name I would mention is one of the writers, John Sapatias, or something like that. I can't pronounce his name right, which you might remember from one of your favorite movies, Prometheus.
Ugh.
Well, it's weird. This guy is getting a lot of work. Doctor Strange, apparently he wrote something called Passengers and the Mummy. I guess the latest incarnation of the Mummy now.
Yeah.
He's involved in that. So that's interesting how they're going in in that direction, with this film. Now, let me just go through quickly the rest of Phase 3 that we talked about. You have Guardians 2. Which, no big surprise there. We knew that was coming. They have something here listed as Untitled Spider-Man film, and we knew that it was coming, and we knew that this was a last-minute addition to Phase 3. They actually bumped things so that they could squeeze in a Spider-Man standalone film.
Right.
But we are going to see him, you said, in Civil War.
Definitely.
A little bit. Good. We have the next Thor film, Ragnarok. The Black Panther film, we mentioned a few minutes ago. Avengers Infinity War Part 1, which... I said before, this is a Russo brother one. We have Ant-Man and the Wasp. And here we have Peyton Reed returning. Again, one of these directors that I guess Marvel is saying, you know what, you did a good job the first time. Let's do another one.
Yep.
Captain Marvel. Here's a weird one. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think they have announced the director for this yet or a star or anything. But it's supposed to be something that's coming.
Right. Yeah, there's very little is known.
And now we're talking about the later end of Phase 3. We're talking about 2019 here.
Right.
Avengers Infinity War Part 2. Now, are these being shot back to back, I assume?
Definitely, yes. It's going to take 9 or 10 months to shoot Infinity War.
Wow. Holy moly. And the last one on the list, which I'll be surprised if it continues on the list, is Inhumans.
Yeah.
Because it's the last 2019 Phase 3 film.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with that. There's a lot of talk about, because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is incorporating a lot of the Inhumans mythology. So there's talk about it, or speculation that it might even be scrapped. But that's a whole other conversation to do with the TV shows. But you never know. Might still happen.
The only other section of Marvel that I want to talk about, which is not considered to be Phase 3, but it's the television side, specifically the Netflix side. We've already talked about how great Daredevil was this past year. And I just finished watching Jessica Jones, which you haven't touched yet.
No.
And all I can tell you is it was a very, very good companion piece to Daredevil. I still like Daredevil better. It's more my style of superhero. This is different, but it's in that same world. It feels like it's happening a block away.
Well, that's the whole point.
And and I'll tell you something. The best thing about it, and when you finish watching it, to me, the best thing was David Tennant. He made such a great villain. And the thing I like the best about the villain is the fact that he has such a complicated, it seems like a simple superpower, if you will. And
I know. He's the Purple Man. He can, make you do whatever he wants you to do.
Right. His superpowers, he just tells you what to do and you have to do it.
Yeah. He's a Daredevil villain.
Yeah, but
from the comic.
It is so smart the way they wrote it and the problems with that superpower, how he has to be very careful what he says and the way that he acts. Again, it's maybe because he's British. These British guys are just amazing actors.
Yeah, they are.
But I'm telling you, when you're done watching it, that's like the number one thing that's like, wow, they really made him smart. It's a very smart bad guy.
Right.
So I think this basically wraps it up for our Marvel roundup, of phase 3 and what's coming up in the future. Like you mentioned before, and like you always mention, the more the better. Keep them coming. So far, they haven't stepped on any landmines.
No, they haven't slipped.
Granted, with Netflix, they have a lot of other stuff. They have the Luke Cage, which is a character that was already introduced in Jessica Jones. We've seen him. We know what he's all about. And then you have Iron Fist and the Defenders. So no idea what they're going to do with those yet.
And season 2 of Daredevil in March.
No kidding. Actually, they earlied it up. It was supposed to be April, and all of a sudden they said we're going to get him a month earlier. So at this point, we have, I guess March is Daredevil, and May is Captain America. Civil War. Those are the next 2 big ones that we're going to be waiting for, right?
Yep.
All right. Well, I want to thank Steve for joining me today and putting me in my place, updating me on Marvel, exactly where are we and where all these things are coming from. And I want to thank you guys for joining us, and we'll hope to see you here soon at GeekFest Rants. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you for the coffee, ma'am. It's not too often that you rob a place and they get welcome back. Because we just robbed you.
You know that he was arrested for stealing a smoothie machine, right?
2 smoothie machines.
Are you sure they can handle this?
Oh, we can handle it. We're professionals.
You'll forgive us if we're not instilled with confidence. Well, hey, everybody, just kick back and relax a little bit, man. We know our business. We broke into this spooky-ass house, didn't we? I let you. Well, one could say that I let you let me.
Look, it's okay. They can handle this.
Yeah, we can handle it.
You got their credentials?
He's in the system.
I'm in the system. You're in the system. The system?
Yeah, we're doomed.
Being that I'm sort of the comic nerd here.
Stop.
I'll eat my hat if that Sinister Six movie ever actually happens.